Kids and sleepovers.
Yeah. I feel like a lot of people are talking about it right now too, because a lot of us are quite tired. We're like, how can we get a break? Sleepovers.
Send them to someone else's
Where do we
house.
stand as a family with this? So, yeah.
Do you get asked a bit about that at Parenting Place and people sort of trying to figure out how to navigate that?
There's so many things that we get that we talk about at Parenting Place with our coaches and within courses. But yeah, it does come up quite a bit.
Okay, so you get to a certain age where with the kids, they ask if they can crash over at their mate's place. And what age do you find that normally happens with children, that with families as well, with families?
Well, I think there's no, this is the particular age. I think all families are so different. All kids are so different. But there's two things that we really want to happen before you start considering whether your child's ready. And it's one, that they've found a real confident voice to be able to talk up for themselves if they're not feeling comfortable.
Yeah,
So when your kids sort of, found that voice at home. And then you need to have really good chats around body boundaries and that you're feeling really confident around that and really good talks. So those are two things that need to happen. So we're normally looking around 9 or 10 that those things are kind of ticking off.
What about the families that they're going over to? Do you, from a parent's perspective, I think Bjorn's maybe he's going through it with his young boys. I've been through it with my young kids as well, with my kids when they were a lot younger. Knowing the parents that they're going to is really, really important.
Vetting them.
Vetting them, yeah. Here is my list of 10 questions. Yeah.
Email me your police check. And
But usually
that'd
you
be
know
great.
your kids' friends.
Yeah.
And through that you know the parents. So is that important?
Yeah, I think when we do a play date, I'm like, it is a family play date to start with. You get me as well. I'm bringing the slice and having a cup of tea. So I don't send my child into a home that I've never been in. That's just something that we do in our family. So I think, you want to know the family really well. And I want to do like a barbecue. I'll be like, have to football. Let's go to the park together. We do a whole bunch of sort of family play dates, hangouts, get to know everyone. But I think quite often we think about the parents and getting to know them really well. But it's who else is going to be in the home? Like, do they have maybe a student that's staying with them from overseas, hosting? Do they have family that live there? So you want to know who's in the home.
Oh,
so that's why it's so really good to actually be in there, because quite often when things happen in a home, it's quite often older kids that have a little bit more information, a little bit further ahead. And I don't think that's always on our radar. Quite often we're thinking about the parents, getting to know them, but you need to know who's in that house.
Dude,
everyone.
I never stop to think about that. That's actually a really, really good point.
Yeah, well, look, if I think back to all of my naughty experiences with sleepovers, it always had to do with like the older sibling of the person that you were friends with. It was like the older brother who, or something who has ideas or things that you're like, we feel like we're 4 years older than we are, and you
they're
want
on a pedestal normally,
Exactly,
so that you kind of go with the flow a
Yeah.
little bit more. And that's why having that strong, confident voice is so important for your child, that if they feel uncomfortable, that they're not just going to go with it, that they're going to be able to speak up and go, no, nah, I'm not cool with this.
Man, I think back on some of the wild west of my childhood. No shade on my parents, they're great parents. But I think back in the day, maybe people just thought about the stuff a bit less, or were we just more naive,
dude.
more trusting of like everyone's...
It's so different now. You and I are
bit more
both
onto
parents, and look, you're right, no shade on parents, but culturally as well, there's that comes into play. My parents had no idea where I was, man. And
Harder
they just
to know
trusted.
too. I mean, with technology these days, you have such more contact with your own children as they grow up and stuff. They have phones, they have ways to be able to contact you directly. But I mean, I remember going to someone's house, I didn't even know if they had a phone. So it was like, until your parents come in the next morning, it was
That's
just...
it. You know,
I
communication.
hope everything goes well, because there's no way to contact him if it wasn't.
That's it. That's what it was back then. But now, the lines of communication are definitely open with the phones.
Yeah.
What if, as parents, you've got your boundaries at your house, your child knows their boundaries at your house, you don't know what they're going to over there. Is that a conversation that you need to have with the sleepover parents and the family?
host, yeah.
To say, hey, this is what he or she is allowed to do and not allowed to do, allowed to eat and not allowed to eat, and that sort of stuff? Is that an open conversation that you should have?
Yeah, I think once you've hung out all together, you've got to know the family well. Sometimes you've got to like lean into some awkward conversations.
Yep.
You feel like, I don't want to feel like I'm interrogating them. But you do want to know things like, hey, in our family, phones are in a shared area, it's in the lounge and they don't go into bedrooms. Like, how do you guys do things? At nighttime, do the phones stay in the kitchen, or do they, this is what we do in our family. And what are your settings? Like, are you blocking things that they can search for? How have you got it set up? So these things are really important to know. Even things like maybe what movie do you think they might watch? Or this is something that my child finds quite scary. So all those things are really great. And like food, I mean, I think one of the positives is they go into another family and they see how they do life, and you get to try different food, and maybe you come home with a bit more of appreciation for the home you're in.
Yeah.
Who knows, maybe mum's cooking's not too bad. But I think, you want to have all those conversations and keep the conversation going. I think too, I like to say, if my child wants to come home at 2 a.m, please feel free to call me.
Yeah.
I'm not worried if you're calling me at like in the middle of the night, because that's a funny one too. Like back in the day, if parents couldn't get hold, you were talking about that, Bjorn, they probably had to put you in the car and drive and just knock on the door at 3 a.m. But I prefer them to feel confident and comfortable to know that they can call me at any point.
Man, I as a parent, I'll be honest, we did not have those in-depth, well, I didn't, maybe my wife had more in-depth conversations with the parents of my kids' friends, but I didn't sit down and talk to them about boundaries, settings, where do you have your phones and that sort of stuff. What movies do you guys intend on watching? Do you think for some people that might be a little bit overprotective?
When it comes to my children, they are I will advocate for them. I will step into, conversations. I think it's really good to know these things,
right?
Because all sorts of things can happen. You talk to your friends today, and there probably will be a whole bunch of talks, around the water cooler today about sleepovers. And some people have such great memories of giggling throughout the night. And some people, they still hold stuff. You hear the word sleepover and they're like, ugh. So I think it's really good to have these conversations. And I think it's really good to prepare our child. And I want to say too, if you're listening and you have a stance of no sleepovers, that's totally fine as well. Sleepovers aren't essential for a great childhood. Sometimes I think we feel like it's this milestone that all kids need to go through, and it's not. You can do things like lateovers where, the kids get to go over and hang out, and they get to have dinner and watch a movie. They could even get in their PJs, but then when it's time to go to sleep, you get the phone call, you go pick them up. Another thing we do is we actually just go away with other families and we stay at batches, and that's really fun because we're all there. Our kids
It's like a sleepover.
It's like a sleepover, and they can even all go and sleep in the lounge, but we're still around, or even camping gives them that experience.
Funny, talking about sleepovers, the memories that come back to you that I'd totally even forgotten about. Like, I remember just before, while their last song was playing, I remember wetting my pants at someone's house in the middle of the night. Like, I must have sleepwalked, got out of the room. I think I was in the hallway somewhere, and then I sort of woke up and I'd I'd peed on the carpet or something.
Yeah.
It was 2 a.m, wherever it was. I was like a kid, someone else's house. I didn't even know what to do. I just went back to bed, never told anybody. And I remember seeing their parents in the morning, trying to clean up the carpet. And I just was like, let's go outside and play. Let's get out of here. But I don't know, there's probably a lot of anxiety with certain kids around staying at someone else's house. And I don't know, it sort of throws off your routines and all that kind of stuff can cause weird stuff to happen, like sleepwalking and odd stuff.
I had the same experience actually of wetting the bed when I was a child, and I still remember waking up and being so mortified. And I remember saying to the mum, oh, no, I didn't wet the bed. I sweat the bed. I was just really hot, And she
would have believed you. Yeah.
She was so lovely looking back. She was like, okay, all good. She let me have my dignity, and there was no shame or anything.
Yeah.
And that comes down to my mum also choosing a family that were good family friends, that she knew how she would handle different situations. But one tool we use at Parenting Place, which I think is really good for things like this, is what would you do? So you might say, hey, what would you do if you were watching a movie and it got scary? And so they're having a bit of a rehearsal. What would you do if you did want to come home? Who would you talk to and what would you say? And I like to keep it light as well. I might say, I've got a son. What would you do if you were in bed and you need to do a fart? Just so that it's a bit of a laugh and it's not all serious questions. And that's really good just to prepare them. You probably would be like, yeah, hold it in.
Yeah, we've given advice about the child going over to the sleep for the sleepover. But what advice do you have for parents who are hosting a sleepover themselves, who have got other children coming over to their house? Do the same boundaries apply? Do you just, what does that look like?
Yeah, and I think too, if you're feeling a bit anxious, this can be a really good thing if you want to host it yourself. You know, it's a bit more of a smaller step into it. Yeah, I think I would front all those conversations. You know, I'd be saying, hey, this is how we handle technology in our home. You know, I'll call you if there's anything that happens. You know, is there anything you would like to know about our family? Why don't you come over for a cup of tea and hang out before, you know, and before you head off? So yeah, just to really just say, hey, I know it's a big deal. I'll be looking out for your child, but I think quite often too, we know the family well. You know, my best friend, I know how she would handle situations. I know that she uses common sense media when she's choosing movies if there's younger kids there, you know. So I know that family really well. So I choose those sorts of families that you've been growing up with. Maybe your kids went to kindy together and now they're at school, so that you're just naturally having those conversations, that it's not an awkward, let's sit down and chat this through.
Yeah, but Dayna, there's always that one dude or dudette, you know, who's got the technology, got the phone, and the rules are in your house, they're all in the kitchen at 9 p.m. There's always that one dude or dudette. Come on.
But that's where technology, sometimes we can get a bit nervous, but we can also use it. It also can work for us. So there's so many different setups that people have where, you know, the Wi-Fi switches off at 8 o'clock. You know, and that's done. Or they take the phones and we're like, well, this is where it's going, we're putting it in this cupboard. So you've got to, you know, if there's that kid that's like, nah, I want my phone, well, you talk to the parents and you figure out what's going to work for all of you. And if there's something that's not going to work within your family and how you do it, then you just don't do the sleepover. That's a thing as well. We can say no to sleepovers. And there'll be some kids that you're like, man, my kid and those kids, they're just going to get up to mischief. So let's do play dates with that family.
You ain't ever sleeping over at their house. Did anyone else have the experience where you're having a sleepover and then it's like 3 a.m, you still have not gone to bed and you're, I don't know, doing whatever mischief you're doing, and then you hear the parents' door of their bedroom open and everyone's like, lights out, boom, lie down, and then the door opens and they're like, I know you're awake, and you're all just lying still being like, we're not, we're pretending to be asleep.
Oh, that was Josh, my son, 2 weeks ago. Yeah, they do that.
And then you lean over, you're like, wow, I've never seen your dad angry before. Oh, the torment. Oh, I'm having flashbacks.
Have you had any conversations around culture? Around how that impacts sleepovers?
Yeah, well, I think this is where all these things come up, you know, going, how do you guys do this? And you know, and I think too, you know, I'm Samoan. There's so many more people in my family's home. So, you know, it's all that, who lives here? You know, how do you guys, you know, how do you guys do life, you know? But I think too, we do so many play dates, you know, in that home before we even think about, you know, a sleepover. Cool. So they know who's there. They feel comfortable with that family. And I think it's lovely for kids to get to know other cultures. That can be a real plus and bonus, you know. In this family, they have these traditions. This is how they do things, you know.
Yeah, different food, all kinds of stuff, different experiences.
Yeah.
Dayna, it's been so great having you in. And hopefully, you know, this conversation's brought up stuff. If your parents, you're navigating this, maybe there's some things in there that you're like, oh, wow, I've never thought about that before. Or maybe we should start doing that or could implement some of these things. If people are navigating this or something similar, you've got family coaches at Parenting Place?
We've got a great website, parentingplace.nz. You can find out about our coaches. You've had 2 of them on the show already, Sheridan and Jenny. They're both wonderful. So you can sit down and have a 1 hour where you come up with a plan that's specific for your family. But also we've got great articles, and we do talk about sleepovers in those as well. So
it's a great website. You need to head to it if you've got any questions or you want to chat, parentingplace.nz. Thanks, Dayna.